I just watched the season finale of She-Hulk and I've realised that I hated it. Welcome to Sidetrack, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. Right, now, this is going to be an interesting video. I've already talked to you a couple of times, and if you are a regular Sidetracker and you look at the community page in particular, you'll know that I've not particularly enjoyed this series. I'm a big Marvel fan, or I was until about 2 years ago. They're starting to lose my attention. But She-Hulk came along and I thought, you know what? This is the sort of thing that normally Marvel does brilliantly. I'm thinking about the Ant-Man movie. Now, that film shouldn't have worked. It's a character that shouldn't work. But they did a brilliant job with it because they knew just to take the mickey a little bit, to have that little bit of humor, to point out that actually this is a slightly silly character, but he's here anyway and he's still brilliant. And I actually think particularly the first Ant-Man movie worked really, really well. It had that nice little balance. It didn't take itself too seriously, but it was still a serious comic book movie. They'll embrace the silliness, but they will still make a serious comic book series. And they just didn't. Now, in multiple times throughout the series, they have poked fun at the anti-woke brigade. Now, again, if you're a regular Sidetracker, you'll know I hate that word. I feel like we're stuck with it and I'm going to have to use it, but I don't like it. I don't like where it come from, and I don't like how it's been appropriated in the way it has been. I think it's actually an insult to the real, genuine reason for the word. But you'll also know, if you're a regular Sidetracker, that I do think that even though a lot of people, very thoughtful subscribers that do say this is woke, that is woke, they have good reasons for it. Some people are just racists and sexists and whatever else ists, and they use this word as a cover for their own bigotry. Like I say, not everybody, but some. And that is my problem with if you're using the word, really. You're aligning yourself with these people, and that's unfortunate. So She-Hulk poked fun at that once or twice, and I actually really appreciated it. I thought it was quite funny. They made fun a couple of times about the comments pages on Twitter, etc. You know, when She-Hulk did anything that was going to be slightly controversial, I thought that was all right. But the problem is the series became about that. Now, this is my problem with the wokeness of Hollywood at the moment. I don't mind when a story has a point, like, say, taking on the anti-woke agenda, if that's what they want to do. But it shouldn't overtake the story. Now, lots of sci-fi tackles very serious cultural issues like slavery, sexism, racism, and so on. But they do it, when it's done well, in quite subtle, story-driven ways. You can argue that Star Trek, the original series, was woke, and it wasn't always necessarily subtle. The guy with the thing, black on one side, white on the other, and he was being chased by his whole species because his black was on the wrong side, was not a subtle attack on racism. But there was still a serious story there, and they still made a serious show. It still worked. But if you allow your agenda to overtake the story, that's when I have a problem. And this is what happened in She-Hulk. They 100% did this show with the anti-woke agenda in mind. They wanted to poke fun at them, mock them even. And they did repeatedly, to the point where it seriously overtook the show. But even worse than that, they went on to, I'm hoping accidentally, actually mock and take fun of comic book fans as a whole. Actually, they really mock anybody that's enjoyed any Marvel movie ever. And actually, I came away from this final episode a little bit pissed off. But what do I mean by that? Why do I think it's actually mocking comic book fans as a whole? The whole way the series ended in the end, how it started to build up towards quite like a generic Marvel ending, you know. The bad guy takes the serum and becomes the Hulk, even though his transformation sequence was quite cool. Like how his arm turned into Hulk first and dropped to the ground. I quite like that. how the Abomination was then not a villain, which made really no sense because that's where the whole series was building up to before that. And then she just switched on her head and went, "Oh, this makes no sense. This is a complete mess. I'm gonna go see Kevin and sort it out." I hated that. I hated it. I know she broke down the fourth wall repeatedly in the series, but actually she took a sledgehammer to it and smashed it down. It wasn't very well done for me. I did quite like how Kevin was a robot with the baseball cap built into the camera thing. I quite liked that. But again, that whole bit for me was seriously unnecessary. I don't know what the point was, other than to basically say, if you're a comic book fan and you like this sort of ending, that you're some sort of idiot. She says, like, what do we do about Abomination? Oh, they just want him to take responsibility for what he's done. We don't. We want him to actually do what's been very obvious throughout the entire series, that he was manipulating the situation to get her blood for some reason, to be a bad guy. And then to just sort of like go, oh, well, yeah, no, I'm sorry I did that. I'll go write a haiku about it. Just like, oh, for God's sake. It's just, we wanted the series to have a point. That's all. And the point seems to be that if you're a comic book fan, you're a moron. If you like us punchy, breaky, downy things and the action, then there's something wrong with you. I don't understand what they were trying to say with this final episode other than that. I know they were trying to be clever, maybe, but I think they missed. Don't forget that if you enjoy the content, you can hit the join button and become a fully fledged side trekker. That really helps out the channel. You can go to side-trek.com. There's loads of like merchandisey things on there and a load of new designs coming very soon. Also, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you miss none of our new videos, as well as the Side Trek Sides channel. And I think actually, even though I love the actress, I actually really like the character. I would have liked it if she'd have actually joined the MCU. But this series cannot be seen as part of the MCU. It is so disconnected. It's almost like a commentary or even a parody of the MCU. So it's not part of the universe. And so in that case, can She-Hulk ever be part of the universe? No. And that is a massive shame because actually the actress and the characters are actually pretty good. I really don't understand where Marvel is going at the moment. There obviously is a studio trying to move away from just doing comic book series and doing what they've been doing. They're obviously nervous about becoming stale. I think they're nervous about us getting sort of like comic book fatigue. One way of avoiding that is make less stuff. They're just saturating the market with Marvel Studios. And you know what? I honestly think if they slowed down a bit and focused on quality instead of quantity, they'd make a better product and we wouldn't be at risk of getting comic book fatigue, because I personally will always love a good comic book movie. But they've got to be good comic book movies. Doctor Strange 2 is not a good comic book movie. I can't quite put my finger on what's wrong with it. It's just not a very good film. But one of the things I can put my finger on is that it does seem to have been rushed. And some of the special effects are dodgy, to say the least. And that seems because they just didn't spend enough time on it. You've then got Love and Thunder. Now, we've talked about that a few times on the channel. It was just too much Taika Waititi. And I don't think you can actually class that as an MCU movie either, as canon, because they just go way too far into the silly. Now, I've always said Marvel were brilliant at stepping up to the line, stepping up to the, extraordinary, without stepping over and becoming silly. Something the DCEU weren't very good at. They danced all over the silly line. Recently, though, Marvel seemed to have forgotten where the line was. Also, look what they've done with some of the television. Now, Moon Knight, I still can't tell you what that show is about. I can't tell you whether it was actually a superhero or not. I'm not really sure. I remember getting distracted at one point and looking back at the screen and a hippo was talking at me. And I just suddenly realized then I don't know what the hell is going on. It was a little boring and I became easily distracted. I thought the first episode was really clever in the way he kept sort of like closing his eyes and there's something else that happened, closing those. So that was really well done. They just didn't follow it through for the rest of the series. And to be honest, the series was just quite confusing. You then look at WandaVision. It's another series that was actually, if you critically look at it, it was very clever. But with WandaVision, at least the series in the end did have a point. They did have a couple of like Marvel episodes at the end where we got a bit of action and we got a point to the series. We understood what she was doing. In She-Hulk, we got no point to the series. It just carried on in the vein of mocking the anti-woke brigade. And that was it. That was the point of the series. And that's disappointing, to say the least. There was no final episode because nothing actually happened. Now, I don't mind if Marvel are allowing its creators to express themselves and do different things. I would maybe not call it Marvel or part of the MCU. Maybe they could rebrand it as something else, by Marvel Studios, but in a different vein. I would like that. I think it's brave for them to try different things like a comedy. But again, it's not part of the MCU. But I do think if you're going to do that, you've got to do a couple of things. It's got to be funny, which She-Hulk, generally speaking, wasn't. It's got to be reasonably clever, which She-Hulk generally wasn't, even though it was trying to be. And it's got to have a point. And She-Hulk didn't. I'm hoping this is just a one-off with Marvel, and then they're going to figure this out for themselves and get back to what they're good at. But if they don't, we are going to see the end of the Marvel Universe, and that would be a massive shame. Get in the comments, guys, and tell me what you think. Am I just ranting over nothing? Did I just watch a bad episode and just get annoyed? Maybe I'm having a bit of a bad day. Get in the comments. Tell me exactly what you thought of She-Hulk, though. But keep it clean. If you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. It really helps us out. And if you enjoy the content, don't forget you can hit the join button and become a fully fledged side tracker. That really supports the channel. As always, please stay safe. Now go and watch episode 6 of Andor because that's actually very good. Bye, guys.